Greetings, welcome to the channel. I'm EddiesetGo, and in this video we're going to fit this EVOTECH radiator guard to my 2021 Yamaha MT09 SP. Let's go. So welcome to the channel. I hope you're keeping safe and well. This is going to be actually my first ever fitting video. So I've never actually really modded my bikes before. I've fitted a few things like, bar end mirrors, but when it comes to like radiator guards and exhausts, usually the dealership will give me quite a good deal on fitting them for me. So I'm quite excited to get my hands dirty and fit this very highly technical piece of equipment, this radiator guard from EVOTECH. But yes, it was a choice between this and the RNG radiator guard. Both of them are very highly acclaimed and reviewed. I purely picked the EVOTECH one just because of the aesthetics, really. I think it was finished a bit nicer. It looks quite sleek and it looks quite cool. But to fit this, it should be a relatively straightforward job. And that involves removing two hexagonal Allen key screws on the back of this unit here. I'm using a 5/32 hexagonal Allen key. You can also use a 4.5mm one as well. I've lost my 4.5mm, so I'm using the 5/32. So two screws on the rear of this unit. Inside we've got two Phillips head plastic screws. These are purely just to hold the bodywork kind of together. There's no real load bearing on those. So we've got two Phillips head screws, obviously with identical both sides. And once we have removed this, it should expose two bolts which are holding the radiator against the frame, and we'll take those two bolts out and use them to affix the radiator guard to the bike. So this should all go really easily, he says. Famous last words. But what I've also done is download the EVOTECH PDF. There is a fitting PDF. I will put a link to this PDF in the description below if you need to open that. It's very self-explanatory with lots of pictures and arrows pointing where you should be pushing and pulling things. But hey, and yeah, pretty straightforward. So we're going to start by removing the Allen key screws on the back here and try and get these panels off. Let's have a look. Yeah, these 5/32s fit fine. So those are the two screws removed on that side, very straightforward, and then all that's holding these in now should be those plastic Phillips head screws on the inside of this unit. So it's just a Phillips head screwdriver into this kind of plastic nut. It's very delicate, so don't apply any kind of real force to these screws. Now, if you're having any issues with these little plastic screws, for example, you can put your Phillips head screwdriver in there and turn them, and it looks like they're not going to move out. But what you have to do is remember that these are a two-piece assembly. So the best thing to do is, I've just worked it out, is to put a flathead screwdriver or something against the outer side of the screw, just to pinch it and hold it, and then with the other hand unscrew the inside of it, which will then release the tension and allow you to remove the lug. And then once we've removed that bottom screw, that panel should come loose. So there you go, there's the exterior panel, just a bit of plastic. Okay, next up we have to remove these two bolts. I've already removed one, which is holding on this plastic housing to the rest of the radiator unit. So we're going to remove this bolt here, and this is a 10mm socket, and we're just going to literally unscrew it. And I've already done a bit of loosening already. And the bolt comes out. And then the unit, this plastic unit, which has obviously the indicators, and we've got the oxygen sensor going down to the exhaust downpipe there. That seems to be quite happy just hanging as it is. There's no real weight to this. Again, this is just a plastic unit. And we're exposing these two mounts here, which is where the EVOTECH guard is going to be right at home. And those, you can just see there, the mounts will match up nicely onto the side of the radiator where we're going to fit it. So what life's all about, isn't it? unscrewing stuff and screwing it back in again. That's one bolt. These are quite tight bolts holding on this plastic unit which houses the indicators. They're quite tight, so do be patient with them. And then that's the second bolt, and you can just see there's a little bit more to this side. We've just released this housing here. We've got the top of the radiator. We've got the radiator hose here as well, so you have to be quite careful. But obviously you can just see there, below there are the two silver entry points for the screws where we're going to be putting in the radiator guard. So, okay, so before we start actually mounting up the radiator guard, we have to put these little rubber separators onto the radiator guard. You get 6 of these in the pack, and if you can see there, the little rubber with a little lip inside where you can attach them to inside the radiator guard. Okay, so after several minutes of swearing, I've realized that there is actually very subtle round entry points for these rubber mountings, so you really have to look, but there is small round areas around the EVOTECH guard where you can actually fit these things in a lot easier. I've been trying to squeeze in these hexagonal entry points, but no, there is actually round entry points there where you can just, if you find it, there it is. There we go, bit of twisting. And there we go, it fits in fine. So if you are struggling to get the rubber mounts in, do look closely to the EVOTECH guard. There are round, you can see it at the corners, there are round entry points to hold these rubber mounts. So do pay attention, and you'll save yourself several minutes of cursing, which I've just been through. So now we've got the side panels off, we've got our rubber mountings on the guard itself. The next step is fixing this thing against the radiator. The strategy to get this in is to start from the bottom and actually slide the unit, the guard up against the radiator, because on this side, where I showed you where the radiator is, the radiator tap, it is quite tight. There's not a lot of play. This is hanging off quite freely. The left side is a little bit more tight. There's not a lot of room to play with there. So if you kind of start from the bottom and slide up, you can get it in. You're not going to be able to kind of put it in flush and then squeeze it between this unit. You've got to start from the bottom and lift it up against the radiator. But there you go. It's pretty much sitting now in the right place. So I've just affixed the other side, and now we're going to put the final screws onto this side. Just bearing in mind that there is a washer on the top screw here. Make sure that goes in, and that is there when you apply the screw. It's also worth noting that between the two screws, you've got one which has kind of a lip on the bottom. That's the bottom screw, and the one without the lip, that's the top screw. So you'll know because it will go flush, whereas this one kind of sticks out a bit. So use the right screw. So I've almost got the screws all tightened. We've got the indicator housings back into place. The radiator guard is sitting pretty where it should be. I'm just going to tighten this last bolt, and then I shall put the plastic covers back on, and then we can wheel it out the garage for you to see the radiator guard in the daylight. So I've just fitted the EVOTECH radiator guard. Doesn't take too much trouble at all really, just a bit fiddling on some of those plastic screws. You can see it does look very nice, very well put together bit of kit, very flush. And yeah, for those of you thinking, is it worth putting a radiator guard on? I mean, if you get a stone or something smash into your radiator, I think it'll cost about £60, probably $80 to replace the guard, a few £100 to replace the radiator, so I think it's a worthwhile investment really. And it does look quite trick, doesn't it? So that's the EVOTECH radiator guard. Looks awesome, looks cool. All fitted, and the 09 SP is now protected.